Hello and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I hope everyone can hear me okay and everything's working. My name is Alison Castle-Kane. I work for Trinity College London as the Head of Business Development in the UK and Ireland. Really focused on language, so that includes all the language exams that we do in the private sector and also support business development for our secure English language testing unit as well. I am joined by my colleague Deborah Morgan. She's a panelist on the call, and she will also come on towards the end to answer any questions that you might have. Today's session is really focused on the integrated skills in English exam and really designed for people who have been working with us either as a provider or maybe who are new to us, who don't know too much about this qualification and what people can do with an ISE exam. So today we're going to talk a little bit about our secure English language test generally, for those of you who don't know too much about us, and then we'll look at which tests are required for which visa applications. And then I'm going to look in a little bit more detail at the ISE exam itself, look at the academic background and how it's structured, and give you an overview of the different modules and what candidates need to do in the exam. And then towards the end, we'll look at the different support materials that are available to help students prepare or to help you as a provider or a teacher to work with learners to prepare for the ISE exam. If you do have questions as we go along, it would be helpful if you could put those in the Q&A box rather than in the chat, just so that we make sure that we see those questions at the end and that we can make sure that we capture them before we finish. So we'll spend about 25 minutes going through this and then 5 minutes for questions towards the end. For those of you who don't know too much about Trinity College London, we are an international exam board. We operate in over 60 different countries worldwide. And many of you may not realize that we do other areas apart from language. We do arts award, music and drama. And then on the language side, we do ESOL Skills for Life here in the UK, and we do the GESE and the ISE exam in private settings. We also have a whole array of qualifications for teachers of English, so that's everything from the initial SELT TESOL all the way up to an advanced level diploma in teaching English. And then, of course, we do tests for UKVI, so our secure English language tests. We deliver our exams in different ways, so we can deliver them in school or in a place of learning. So we work with all sorts of language schools and FE colleges and adult learning centers to offer Trinity exams, and these places of learning effectively become registered exam centers with us to take our exam, to have their students take exams in their premises. And then, of course, we have secure English language tests. These are all managed by Trinity, and these are approved by UKVI. We have over 20 test points across the UK for learners to sit a secure English language test. And then we work with a whole network of providers that will offer preparation courses for SELT, and also people who work as an agent or an advisor to assist candidates with their visa applications as well. So those are the sort of different ways that we work with people across the UK delivering our language assessments. We have been providing secure English language tests since 2011, so over a decade. In 2020, we became one of 4 providers for secure English language testing in the UK. And as I said, we have 20 SELT centers, which are all run by Trinity staff. Long relationship with UKVI, and consistently satisfying that need for a very secure testing environment. But importantly, we have excellent reviews on Trustpilot. We get 4.9 out of 5 for positive feedback, and a lot of that is around the kind of really nice experience that candidates have in a SELT center, a very welcoming environment from our staff. So lots of positive comments around that experience from our candidates. Many of you, if you've worked with us before, you'll be familiar with the GESE exam, the graded examinations in spoken English. Trinity, we are a market leader for the visas for certainly for British citizenship, but we also do the lower grades as well for further leave to remain or visa extensions. So just as a reminder, the GESE exam is just speaking and listening. It's a 2 skills exam. And these are the different visa requirements for the different grade. So you have a GESE grade 2, which is just a 6-minute conversation with a professional examiner. And then we have GESE grade 3, which is 7 minutes. And these really involve just a conversation phase with the examiner. Again, these are typically used for visas for further leave to remain. We then have grade 5, which is our most popular exam. This is for settlement or British citizenship. This is a 10-minute exam with a professional examiner. It involves a conversation, but it also involves preparing a topic which the candidate will engage with the examiner on. So very sort of personal exam experience where the learners can bring something that they would like to discuss with the examiner. And then many of you may not realize we also do 4 skills. So this is what we're going to talk about today. This is the integrated skills in English exam. It's speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And they're done in 2 different modules, and I'll outline that in a bit. But really what we wanted to draw people's attention to is we're seeing a really sharp increase in candidature for ISE. And a lot of this is for skilled worker visas and health and care worker visas, as well as student visas. So we'll talk about that too. For student visas, it really, for UKVI, it's a B1 test, but if a learner is using the visa for an application into a higher ed program, they may require a higher level. So they need to look at what's required by the institution. And again, I'll talk about that in a bit more detail. B2 and C1. So B2 is, these are more for innovator visas, startup visas, again, student visas where a higher level is required. And again, C1 may be a requirement for some institutions, quite high level programs or a master's degree, for example. Today, I really just want to focus on the B1 level and the structure of the ISE exam at that level so you can kind of understand what candidates have to do. Before we get into the structure, we're going to look just a little bit at the academic background of ISE. I think this is kind of important for people to understand the way that we construct our exams here at Trinity, and really the benefit to the learner, not just in the exam itself, but in the experience of preparing and also teaching ISE. So there are really sort of 3 key areas that are reflected in the ISE exam. Of course, we're looking at language skills. So does the learner have the language of that level? So if they're sitting a B1 test, do they have the skills, the lexis, the grammar for a B1 user of English? But importantly, we're not just looking at linguistic ability, we're looking at their overall communicative competence. So, you know, this is where things like the appropriacy of language come in, the ability of a learner to maybe manage a communication breakdown and clarify meaning, and being able to infer information across different text types and that sort of thing. So these areas are all assessed in the ISE exam. So it's not just focused on those basic language skills. The other areas that we seek to develop with the ISE exam is this notion of transferable skills. So these are skills for employability, 21st century skills that encourage critical thinking, collaboration, really effective oral and written skills. So these are things that are, they're not assessed, but they are developed in the preparation for the ISE exam, and things that the candidates can take with them going forward. And then finally, we have study strategies. So these are actually skills that you not only need in an academic environment, but also in a work environment. So things like effective note-taking and planning and self-evaluation and self-reflection. These things, again, are sort of built into the fabric of the exam. And again, in preparing for and taking the exam, these skills are developed. Again, not assessed, but developed. And I'll show you a little bit about how those things kind of are fed through the ISE exam. So in an ideal world, we would be, if we look at what learners need for further study and for employability, it's not just language, but there's a whole array of skills that learners need, and ISE is a great exam to help develop these skills that are going to be really useful in the future. So importantly, the ISE exam, unlike some other 4 skills exams that are very popular out there, particularly for study visas, it is modular. So you have a speaking and listening module and a reading and writing module. When you are taking this as a secure English language test for a visa application, you have to take both modules on the same day. And importantly, you have to pass each skill. So ISE is a banded exam, so you are taking the level that is required for whatever purpose you need it for. So if a B1 or a B2 is required, you sit that level of ISE. You have to pass in every skill, so you can't have one skill can't compensate for another. You have to be at the level of the Common European Framework and actually pass each skill. So that's really important and something that we emphasize when we're talking to higher education institutions. And really, it's the coverage of language at that level, which ensures that that the candidates are getting as many questions as that level, which is a more true representation of their level. The results are shown by skill area. Again, some higher education institutions may request, for example, that you have a merit in writing and speaking, if those are sort of areas that they really want to emphasize oral and written skills. And it's important that candidates check the requirements of the university. The modules in and of themselves do not carry certification. You have to pass both modules in order to get the full ISE certification. This is an overview of the different tasks. I'm going to focus on B1 today, as I said, just to give you an outline of kind of what does the exam look like across the different modules. But across all levels, the reading and writing is a 2-hour paper. And really, there's some differences just in the length of tasks in terms of reading and how much writing output is required. Speaking and listening, a bit like the GESE exam, differs in length as you go up, but as you can see from A2 to C1, the length goes from 16 minutes to 25 minutes, and a slightly different type of task that's required. So speaking and listening, you can see there are 4 different tasks, 3 of which, again, are reflective of what happens in a GESE exam, but you have the topic at every level, again, where a learner brings in what they'd like to discuss with the examiner. You have a collaborative task at ISE 2 and 3 that's more about sustaining dialogue around a prompt with the examiner. You have a conversation task, which is consistent across all levels, and then you have independent listening, which is more reflective of what you would do, maybe listening to some sort of somebody presenting, for example, or maybe a lecture, that kind of thing. The speaking, we have a topic task form. So this is an example of ISE I. Again, this is a really personal experience for the learners, and I think provides some motivation in terms of being able to choose something that's really important to you. And of course, you're more likely to produce, be more at ease and really be able to show your language skills if you're talking about something that is known to you and quite important to you. The conversation task, again, this is consistent through all levels. I'll give you an example for ISE I, the conversation task. These are the topics, so the examiner is going to choose 2 of these 6 to engage in a conversation with the candidate. Really important to notice that these are topics that you would probably find in a general English course book at this level, so it really suits if you want to kind of mix it in with other learners who maybe are doing general English. But again, it is the kind of topic that you would find in a course book for a B1 level. So you've got travel, money, fashion, rules, regulations, health and fitness, and learning a foreign language. Again, so the learner is really going to be aware of what they're going into in terms of dealing with that conversation task. The listening task is probably more traditional, but what the learner has to do with this is slightly different to other examinations. At ISE I, they're going to hear the listening twice. So they're going to hear a short talk, and then they have to kind of get the gist of what the listening is about. So they have to report back to the examiner in their own words of what the talk is about. When they listen again, they have to take notes about what they hear, and they have to give some specific information. So again, it's kind of that broader listening for gist and then listening for real detail. And you'll see this kind of being able to note take or synthesize information and put it back into your own words, like we talked about at the very beginning, these sorts of skills that are really important in a work environment and also in an academic environment. But this is how we structure the listening to encourage the development of those skills. Reading and writing, as I said, it's 2 hours. You can see there on the screen that really the difference is in the length of the readings, and also the length of what is required in terms of writing. There are 4 tasks. We'll look at these briefly. The long reading tends to be more academic or subject-based. The multi-text reading is across different genres. So maybe dealing with things like infographics or a blog, and really looking at digital literacy as well. And then the reading into writing is planning, checking, going back to the text to answer questions. So they use the multi-text reading as a springboard into writing. Again, it's the integration of skills and very much reflective of what we would do in a day-to-day environment at work or in our studies. And then finally, the extended writing is really encouraging the language of that level, and to reflect some of their ability to write a good introduction, make some key points, and conclude. So all the good structure of a decent piece of writing is looked at. Just briefly, so you've got part 1, the long reading, just showing you that it's going from looking at paragraph level to specific information and even word and phrase level. So that kind of broader, extensive reading down to really intensive reading of specific information and even specific words and phrases. Multi-text, you can see a little bit on the screen there that you might be dealing with things that are a bit more visual, or shorter text, again, like a blog, and you're going from understanding the kind of main idea and maybe looking at how information is put together and trying to interpret that from a visual or sort of table information. And then again, more specific information about the detail that's included in those different text types. Reading into writing, again, they're going to go back to the text and the multi-text task, and they're going to be encouraged to do some planning here. So again, that kind of developing those really good habits of planning what you're going to write before you start. This is not assessed. In fact, they can even write in their first language if they want to. So it's really trying to organize their thoughts so that they can produce a good piece of writing. Extended writing, as I said, this is really trying to pull out, have they got the language of the level? And it is, the subject is going to be aligned to what the level is that they're taking. So the higher levels will be a little bit more complex in terms of their slightly more academic tone, or maybe more environmental issues and things like that. Again, you have space for planning. The notes aren't assessed, but it's really part of them producing a good piece of work. And of course, encourage to check what they've written and reread what they've done in this task as well. Okay. Feedback and support. One of the nice things about ISE is you get a full diagnostic report. So it shows their strengths in each area and also the areas for improvement. So this is really useful, I think, for teachers who are really trying to kind of look at what areas does this student need to work on in order to get to the next level. So really useful, detailed, granular information about their performance, which many students really like to see. And again, it helps with planning. There are a whole array of support materials for ISE. And this is, we have them all organized freely on our website for teachers. So teachers who are preparing learners, that we have probably most importantly the specifications or the guide for teachers itself. So that will outline exactly what the candidate has to do in every part of the exam, but it will also give you the assessment criteria, so you'll be able to understand how are the examiners marking that. You'll also be able to understand for each skill area, for example, what constitutes a pass, what constitutes a merit, and what constitutes a distinction. So these are some really clear guidance there. We have a whole array of sample papers and also sample videos, which are really, really useful to watch candidates with the examiner, and then to look at their scoring and what the rationale was for the scoring. So you kind of get to see really good performances and performances that may have been sort of borderline. So really important to kind of look at the differences there, and I think really useful for students as well, so teachers and students. The ISE schemes of work are probably the most popular resource that we have. This really kind of lays out they're done by level, so there's a scheme of work for each level of ISE, and this really kind of maps out to ensure that you're covering preparation for each task in each part of the exam. And within the schemes of work, there are links to handouts and things that you can use with the learners. We also work with some of the publishers globally, so there are published materials. If the students really would like to have a course book, there are study packs available to purchase through the Trinity website. So for some learners, they really like to have that so that they can refer back to it and take notes and have their own copy. So that's important for people to understand as well. So ISE is really, again, supporting the development, we're not just testing the language ability of the learner, but we're really trying to, again, kind of encourage the development of these skills that people will need going forward. And we look at what communication is like in real life. It's never, you may make mistakes. It's how you recover. You may not always understand. It's how you clarify. Those really important communication skills is what is really encouraged in the ISE exam. It is really learner-centered. The ability to bring in those topics helps the candidates perform well. So it's really kind of encouraging them to perform at their best by giving them the opportunity to talk about something that's important to them. We talk about all Trinity exams as having this notion of positive washback. So what we mean by that is that the student preparing for a Trinity exam and the teacher teaching that preparation course has a really positive impact on teaching practice and sort of best practice in the classroom. So we like to think that you're not just learning task types for the sake of passing the exam. You're learning to do things that are going to help you in the future, but they also make the experience of learning more positive. Of course, we are encouraging more spontaneous interaction, and that's what we're assessing. And that's done by a professional examiner, of course. So these are people who have worked on the panel for years, and they also know how to put candidates at ease as well, and they have a kind of bias for best to try and make sure that they perform to their best ability. Most importantly, and what we kind of wanted to emphasize, is ISE does carry global recognition. We work around the world with all sorts of ministries of education and higher ed institutions. So ISE is used for a whole array of reasons, not just for example, entrance into an English medium university, but also, for example, in Spain, for example, teachers of English will need to pass ISE at B2 in order to become a teacher of English. So we have that sort of recognition globally as well. And finally, most importantly, obviously, it is approved by UKVI for the purposes that we outlined in the beginning. And it's also accepted as proof of English language proficiency by 85% of state institutions here in the UK, so in the higher ed sector, and many private institutions as well. Okay, so next steps, and I'm kind of bang on time. We hope to do about 30 minutes with you, sort of an extended coffee break, if you like. So if you have been maybe working with us to do preparation for the GESE exam, and you'd like to think about potentially adding ISE, we'd love to hear from you. You can speak to our team about becoming a course provider. If you're already not working with us in that way, we can talk to you about how to do that. We can talk to you about our test dates and the different test points for ISE, tell you how to access marketing materials, so things that might be helpful for you if you start offering ISE as for course preparation. This would be things like how to access assets and copy, so you can kind of describe the test to potential candidates. And then how to access all the support materials. So we have a whole bank of recorded webinars, and then also how, where to go to get the schemes of work and access the videos and so on. And our SELT account coordinator, Deborah Morgan, would be more than happy to speak with you about that. As you know, we have recorded this session, so we will be sending a recording out to everyone who attended today, but we'll also send it, because I can see we had people who registered but who couldn't join us this morning. So everyone who registered will get a copy of this session. I do see we have a couple of questions in the chat, which is brilliant. So I will have a look at those. If there's anything that comes up as I'm speaking, do feel free to pop it in the Q&A as I'm going on, because I'll deal with a few of these questions right now. So one question from Jamal, will people get marks for planning in the extended writing? No, Jamal, it's a good question. I just want to be clear. So what we're really doing is we're not assessing the notes. We're not assessing, you wouldn't get extra points for that. It's encouraged. So this is part of the preparation that you're trying to develop those really, that's an important skill before you start writing, is to plan what you do. But it's not something that the examiner looks at. Again, it can be done in your own language. And it's really to help you kind of organize your ideas and encourage that, before you launch into writing, to start to, plan what you're doing. There are a variety of levels of ISE. So this is from Sohal. If I've said your name correctly, apologies. Why are there a variety of levels of ISE if exams are for skilled workers? So, okay, just to clarify, ISE I is the B1 level. And if a skilled worker visa or health and care worker visa is required, a scale-up visa also is part of that as well. The applicant, if that's the visa that they require, they would sit the B1 exam. The reason there are other levels, that it tends to be that the higher levels of ISE are used for to access bachelor and master's programs in universities. So we have we have the whole range. We also have an A2 level, which is used in different places around the world. So it really is, if the learners that you're working with need that skilled worker visa, they should be sitting the ISE B1 exam. Okay, and then we have a question, can you send us the presentation as well? Yes, Jamal, I will send that directly to you. Actually, we may be able to also put a copy of the presentation alongside the recording, if that's helpful, but we will send the recording out. You'll definitely have that. And somebody has asked, what are the criteria to become an ISE provider? Okay, so I just want to kind of clarify, if you are preparing learners for the ISE exam, for which the learner will sit the exam in a SELT center. So they need to, if it's for visa purposes, they must take the exam in a secure English language testing point. You can work with us either as a listed SELT course provider or as a regular provider. And that really is dependent on your accreditation. And my colleague, Deborah, again, could answer those questions for you. I'll just put Deborah's details back on the screen there. If you want to send her a quick email, she can assist you, but it really depends on your status of accreditation as to whether you would be a listed provider or a regular provider. We do work with a number of private schools as well who may be doing ISE preparation. And you can become a registered exam center to run ISE in your place of learning, if you like. But it's really important to realize that if a student or candidate sits the ISE privately in a private registered exam center, it cannot be used for visa purposes. Now, a good example of this might be, you may be in an area where there are, for example, lots of students, and those students are maybe already on a student visa, but they haven't achieved the level of proficiency that's required from a local university, for example. So the student may decide that actually, rather than taking another exam, they might like to try to take ISE. they can then sit the ISE exam privately to demonstrate their level of proficiency. So it's really important to understand the difference there, and it is dependent on what the candidate actually needs the test for. But we do run ISE privately in lots of different centers. We do a lot in upper secondary, with international students in upper secondary. We do it in private language schools as well, but again, it's kind of catering for this learner who maybe, they've come here, for example, maybe on a short stay and then decide that they want to do an academic program and they want to go on to university. So there are reasons for doing ISE maybe to prove their proficiency with the university, and then the university would give them an offer into a certain program. So really important to understand the difference there. And it is possible to provide preparation for both of those types of learners. It is obviously the same exam, it's just a difference in where they sit it and how. Okay, I think that may have answered. Let me just double check. Oh no, there's 4 here. Okay. Oh, there's lots more. Okay, re-popularity. How does ISE compare to other exams out there? As a school, we do not get many people asking for them. This is a good question, Tim, and a fair point. I think with the UK, a lot of students, let's just talk about student visas here. A lot of students will need to take a secure English language test outside the UK before they arrive. Now, unfortunately, Trinity does not have international SELT, so we can't provide Trinity exams as secure English language tests outside of the UK. So what that means is a lot of learners are quite narrow in what they're choosing, without saying the name of another exam, but a lot of them will come having taken an exam as a secure English language test overseas before they've arrived. I think a lot of this is about awareness raising. So this is kind of why we're doing what we're doing today. And not, exams suit different learners. So for some students who are maybe struggling with another type of exam or another named exam, this may be a better option for those learners. And, it's really thinking about what the strengths of the learners are and whether this format with the integrated skills and how we interact with the examiner and what the learners are assessed on and the types of tasks that they need to do might be more suitable for particular learners. So again, it's sort of awareness raising to make sure that people here understand there's more than one choice, or more than 2 choices even, that depending on what their requirements are, Trinity can, offer an exam for every type of visa application, provided the learner is already here. Okay. Amreen has asked, Amreen, your next question is kind of similar, and I think I answered part of that. So do you have to have an educational background to become an ISE provider? A lot of that is really dependent on if you have accreditation or not, but we have different types of providers and people who work with us in different ways, which again, Deborah would be able to explain to you if you want to drop her an email. Okay. Okay, and the final question, Tim, thank you for your presentation. Thank you for joining us, Tim. Will there be presentations for higher ISE exams? We have some really good overviews in our webinar bank, and maybe Tim, I'll grab your email after and I'll send you a link to that, because that has a whole array of recorded materials and one that gives a really broad, much longer presentation and broad overview of ISE and kind of different activities and examples of the different levels. So I can send that to you. But we continue to do these regularly and would encourage you to join us again. Okay, I'm going to end it there. I've run over a little bit just with the questions, but I just want to say thank you to everyone for taking time this morning to join me. I hope you found it useful. Again, we will send a recording, but if you have any questions, do feel free to get in touch with us. And we hope to hear from you, and any questions about ISE or how you would do preparation, please feel free to get in touch. Okay, thanks everyone for joining us, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.